So we're still in late July. Kamala Harris still has the convention, which will continue the quote coronation of her. And she has the announcement of her running mate, which should provide a further boost to her numbers if she chooses somebody acceptable. And, some of these, maybe the Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro, who people are looking at very closely, obviously swing state. So in your experience, do conventions and the announcement of a running mate provide a decent boost to a candidate? And is it sustainable? Does it last?
Well, just last week, obviously, Trump announced his running mate, but then you had Biden dropping out, and that took a little bit of that momentum away from what the Republicans were doing at their convention. So obviously, the Democrats have their plan. They're going to try to create momentum and move the needle in their direction. But the Republicans are going to come out with some messaging as well and try to circumvent some of that. And that's going to be interesting to watch over the next 4 or 5 weeks as they have to redefine the campaign between these new candidates, or at least between Harris and Trump. And that's going to be a challenge. And we'll see what the messaging is over that time. And then from there, it'll kind of get into a groove, I presume, on what we're going to be talking about in the fall.
Is there any way of knowing through polls whether there's any backlash to the way this was done within the Democrat Party? That it really was done just by the elites deciding it would be Kamala Harris. And even though the messaging from Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries continues to say, ground up, not top down, people know. So is that a factor or no? Is that just a media story?
We'll see. Again, these things take time for people to kind of, what if it was one of their candidates that didn't get the nomination and maybe that candidate becomes the VP, in which case that will, kind of end some of those sour grapes. But at this point, it looks like the Democrats have kind of rallied around Harris. In our polling, about 80% of Democrats in each one of these states wanted Harris. 10-15% preferred somebody else. So there could be a little backlash on that within the party. But the idea there is to get them all unified against Trump. The one issue here is that Trump's favorability is actually stronger than Harris's in a lot of these states. So it's going to be an interesting play. I don't know if that same playbook that the Democrats have used for the last couple of cycles against Trump works as well this cycle, but obviously time will tell.
I know it's strange to think about because what could they possibly say about Donald Trump that hasn't been said already? Where she's not exactly fresh meat. She's been the vice president for 4 years, but she's a lot fresher. All of her policy statements and gaffes and so on will be coming back in a very forceful way. You can't really do that to Trump as much, or at least, it's not going to have the same effect because people lived it.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that. How much more on Donald Trump could be out there? Harris is now going to be attacked in ways that she hasn't been before. And now we'll see how she responds to some of her policies and some of those ideas that she has out there. And then obviously having to defend this administration's positions on some of the issues of the day. So right now,
okay, let me ask you something on that. So there's been a debate since he dropped and endorsed her on whether the Republicans' message has been, it's not the person, it's the policies. That's the problem. That's the reason you shouldn't vote Dem, because it's not the person, it's the policies. But what you seem to be saying is so far, it actually was the person for at least, some decent share of swing state voters. It was Joe Biden.
Yeah, especially the younger vote, the female vote, and the minority vote. Those were 3 major constituents that were leaving Biden. And they weren't necessarily going to Trump. They were going to third parties or not going to vote at all. But we could see it. We could see the fallout in these numbers every week. She's been able to bring that group back in. But remember, they're still trailing. So she'll need a bit of a game changer to continue to get this momentum and then get over Trump in Pennsylvania, Georgia, Michigan. Those are states that the Democrats need to win in order to get to 270.
So can we talk about that? Because last time you were on, we talked about how it wasn't looking so great for the Democrats. This is with Biden in the Rust Belt and in those sort of blue wall states of Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. And now there's been buzz about how that may or may not be true for Harris. She's better than Biden in those states probably. but she needs to focus not on those states, but on the Sun Belt, which as far as I understand is Arizona, Georgia, North Carolina. Is that can you walk me through how this calculus goes and whether it's a good bet for them?
Yeah, it's interesting because it's going to depend on that VP pick. Does she go with Mark Kelly and try to bring Arizona back into the fold, or does she end up going with maybe a Shapiro or a Roy Cooper out of North Carolina, try to bring that back into the fold? But right now, it looks like Arizona is not all that competitive. It's leaning towards Trump. And so with that, Biden or the Democrats are at 292 in their electoral votes. Nevada has been a state, the silver state has been leaning towards the Republicans. And so that's something to also keep an eye on because there are 6 electoral votes. And while that doesn't necessarily end it for the Dems, it definitely puts a lot of pressure on them because now you have Pennsylvania. That becomes a battleground. If the Democrats lose Pennsylvania, Nevada, and Arizona, Trump wins. If before last week when we were talking, Georgia was more red. And if Georgia had turned red, now it's like any one of those states, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Virginia, any one of those states that turn would cost the Democrats and give Trump back the White House. And so keeping an eye on Georgia and seeing if Harris is able to kind of create more energy in Atlanta and that Stacey Abrams magic that she almost had, but that seems to have been lost down there. So we're going to see if it comes back. North Carolina is a state that they're talking about coming back into play. I thought North Carolina was the furthest away. It was about 7 points for Trump. So we're going to see if the governor, if they go with him out of North Carolina, Cooper, if that brings that's 16 electoral votes, that would change the map because right now it's leaning red. And so each one of these has the pluses and minuses, but what you're looking at is a field where the Democrats are on a little bit of defense, having to defend all of these states. And if Arizona goes and Georgia goes, then it's really a tough map.
Protein bars can be chewy and dense or so chalky that they crumble apart in your hand. But I want to tell you about the launch of Magic Spoon Treats. You probably know Magic Spoon for their popular high-protein cereal, right? That has more than 75,000 5-star reviews. Well, Magic Spoon has turned their cereal now into high-protein treats that are light, crispy, and taste just like those classic crunchy cereal bars. Magic Spoon's brand new treats come in 6 deliciously nostalgic flavors, including marshmallow, chocolatey peanut butter, blueberry, birthday cake, yum, and strawberry milkshake. Magic Spoon treats are a tasty time machine back to your childhood. You likely know Magic Spoon cereal, and now we are excited to bring you the news about the launch of their treats. Scoop up these new crispy, crunchy, protein-packed treats right now with 10% off just by going to magicspoon.com/MK or use the promo code MK when you place your order at magicspoon.com. Magic Spoon, hold on to the dream. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.